this opportunity.
Gentleman in the front row had a question, I believe. We have a microphone down here, Robert.
This light's so bright I can't see you, but go ahead.
That's all right. It's better that way, actually. So back in the 80s, one of the big problems we had was tax policy that allowed us to overbill our
Right.
Then we had the problem that, recently where our policies were messed up.
Right.
What policies do you see out there right now that currently exist, or do you see coming that are going to create the next problem?
We do have some issues we need to address. There's no question. What policies do I see out there that pose some risks to the economy? Certainly, again, today's not the time to be worrying about how much the deficit is because we haven't gotten back to fundamental growth yet. And as we do, it'll improve some. But someday down the road, we have to come to grips with the fact that government on the whole right now spends about, every time it spends $1, it taxes about 65 cents, and that can't go on forever. And we're going to have to make some hard and tough decisions there. I'm concerned about the health care reform bill. We desperately needed health care reform in this country, but this particular bill has some real issues with it, and in particular, it didn't address the major issue, which is cost. And I've been studying health care for 30 plus years, and very intensely been involved at every level in policy in health care. And there are some things we can do to reduce cost. One of the most important of which is just get healthier. That's the primary thing we can all do.
And also be educated, because isn't it true that most of us, especially when we have group insurance and that sort of thing, we never actually see what something costs.
Exactly.
It's hidden from us, so we don't.
Right. And that's part of what the whole thing that happened with healthcare. If you think about it, most of us grew up in a system where you had maybe, let's say, a 20% copay. Okay? And let's say a doctor visit costs $50. Well, if you wake up in the morning and you feel $10 worth of bad, you go to the doctor, and even though it's going to cost society $50, and somebody, your employer's paying that, but we grew up on a model where we didn't see the full cost. If I told you today from now on cars are going to be 20 cents on the dollar, what would we do? Everybody run out and buy a bunch more cars than they buy now. And so we've got that perception. There's all kinds of demographic issues in there. There's cost issues. The pharmaceutical companies, man, they are great. I believe in the First Amendment, and I believe that people need to advertise, but they are so good at it, they create diseases. No, when I was growing up, shyness was not a disease. Okay? Well, now, shyness is a disease, and if you're shy, you're supposed to take Paxil. And I understand that it has a lot of wonderful uses, but they tell you to take it if you're shy. So let's say a guy takes it, he's not shy anymore. What's he going to do? For the first time in his life, he's not shy. He's going to go to a bar and try to pick up girls. They're going to take one look at him and say you don't have enough hair, so he has to take Propecia. It has side effects.
I know where we're going after this. You don't have to go there.
Okay. I'll let it go.
Right here on the front row.
I won't mention Previs and Viagra, but go ahead.
Good evening. I have two questions real quick.
Yes, sir.
One dealing with the completion of Medicare and Social Security in like 2032 or something like that. Mm-hmm. And then also the other factor is China right now is in a very big boom right now. Number one economic worldwide, I guess. And we are in so debt to China that we're just able to hopefully just pay the interest in that debt. Should we be concerned about that when we're trying to influence equal rights and things like that?
Very good questions, both of them. First one was about Medicare and where we are in terms of Medicare and the Social Security system and that sort of thing. And again, fundamentally, actuarially, it's not sound right now. I mean, and as people start retiring, one of us baby boomers turns 65 every 14 seconds for the next 19 years. And so, given that situation, there's going to be some real problems. We don't have it actuarially sound for that. We will figure out ways to muddle through that. As Margaret Thatcher said about the British, we'll figure out ways to trim benefits a little bit here and there. We'll figure out ways to do things. One thing we'll probably end up doing is hiding a big chunk of it in general revenue, and so people don't see how much of it comes out of their paychecks. When Social Security started, 27 people worked for every person on it. People retired at 65. The average life, if you were 65, your average lifespan at that time was 2 years. Today, if you made it to 65, there's a very good chance you're going to make it to about 85. There's 3 people working for every one that's retired. In a few years, there'll be 2 people working for every one that's retired. So that whole sort of biological interest rate we used to have on Social Security, we don't have anymore. And so we do have to make some changes there. And that's one of the things. It's also part of the health funding issue. And that was one of my complaints about the health issue was that we'll pay for it by cutting Medicare. Well, the last time I checked, if the problem was we didn't have enough resources in healthcare, you don't get any more resources to take out of one pocket and put in another pocket, which is kind of what this deal did. In terms of China, interesting, fascinating place. I've spent a lot of time in China and worked a lot with China over the years. But the issue you raised about the debt and that sort of thing with China, will they continue to hold our debt? Yes, they will. David and I were talking at dinner tonight. You know, the U.S., as I started to say a moment ago, we're so fundamentally strong that's why I'm an optimist. Look at the underlying fundamentals and the creativity of this country. The week, during the middle of this crisis a couple of years ago, the week we announced we were going to borrow $1 trillion, the interest rate went to zero on that money. People want to hold U.S. debt in times of uncertainty, and the world's becoming more uncertain, not less. So yes, there'll be a market for our debt. There's a lot of concerns about the deficit, but that sort of doomsday they won't hold our debt anymore is not one of them. We could have 6 times the debt we have now, and the world would still hold as long as we had the underlying political strength. But the issue you raised is very important, and that is we have always tried to be a country that sought to impact human rights and issues of that nature. And one thing we have lost today in negotiations, whether it's about trade or human rights or whatever, we've definitely lost some leverage at the negotiating table. We don't have as much leverage as we used to have, and that's one of the sort of combination economic and non-economic fallouts of the situation we find ourselves in.
Last question, and then we're going to move on. We've got the Bernie Madoffs and the Jeff Skillings and the Enrons and things like that, and Gordon Gekko and then the movie out and everything. It seems like that whether you're in politics or in business, there's always that temptation to begin to think of it as your sandbox. And our fathers and mothers taught us a lot of great things. Leave it cleaner than you found it. It's not your job. It was there before you got it, and somebody else will have it after you're gone. There was a caretaker mentality that we seem to have. I mean, we were always looking for innovation and invention and ways to improve our lives, but at the same time, we looked at our lives as if they were not our own. And somehow that made us, at one point, I think, better people. And how do we get back to that? I know there are a lot of people who are still like that, but it seems like all we hear about are the people who take advantage and seek self-advantage and that sort of thing. And as a result, all of a sudden you go to the cookie jar and it's empty.
Yeah, and then to some extent, I mean, we wax about the good old days, but there have always been characters like that throughout history. In fact, the first person that wrote about how we respond to incentives that we're aware of was a guy named Aristotle. So it's been around a long time. But what is important is we have the structural systems we have in place today in this country reward short-term returns. You know, and that's where you get the guys who will, you know, you set up a mortgage situation where you can make short-term money, and this guy can make money from it, and this guy can make money from it. Everybody sells it and resells it. Everybody thinks they're making money in the short term. We will run it off the track every time because all of our incentive structures are built that way. We do need to fundamentally alter those incentive structures, and some major corporations start to do this with their compensation systems and other things now. Start to alter those incentive situations where you do have to think about the long term, which is where you bring in the greater good, so to speak. That's when you start to think about, you know, do I really want to do something that's going to make me some short-term money, but it's going to create havoc down the road? And if you change the incentive systems where we don't do that anymore, then you can alter that behavior very fundamentally. And I think that's something we have gotten away from. I think, you know, technology's gotten us into instant gratification. As I say, our compensation systems have gotten us into instant gratification. You know, I think that's part of the fundamental structure, that as we start to reform and walk back some of the things we had to do in the crisis and that sort of thing, I think that's one thing that's very, very important. And I think some people are aware of it. We've just got to, as a society, keep that dialogue going, keep that momentum going, that we can move things more in that direction. Because if you set up the right set of incentives, you'll get the right results. If you set up the wrong set of incentives, you'll get the wrong set of results every single time.
I'm in favor of putting him in charge. How about you?
And if elected.
We're just, yeah. Do I hear a second? Aye.
Yeah.
All in favor. Stan, thank you very much.
No, as you pointed out, I'm not new circumspect, and nothing really can do anything.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Ray Perryman.
Thank y'all very much. Appreciate it. Thanks, Jody.
Dr. Perryman.